Hi guys, in this video we're going to look at how to declare a variable in JavaScript. In the last video I showed you or I explained to you what a variable was in JavaScript and how you could use methods on variables and how you could log them to the console, how you could assign new values, etc. And I explained to you why they were useful for your programming or your programs in general. So in this video, we're going to look at how to declare variables. If you notice, I have var here, the keyword var before paragraph, and paragraph here is the name of the variable. So the keyword var here is what makes paragraph here a variable. So the first thing you need to understand is that declaring a variable means creating a variable. So if you create a variable in JavaScript and then you run your scripts, automatically the JavaScript engine is going to create some space in memory for your variable. Now remember, a variable is like a container. Okay, it's a reference to a location in memory, like the name of the variable. It's a reference to a location in memory where data is stored. Before you can have that location in memory or that space, you need to declare the variable first, and then you store data in that container, all right? Because the variable is like a container. So we use the keyword var to state that this is a variable. Now, for many years, var has been the way to create variables. Now, let me remove this so we get more space on the screen. So up until the last few years, more recently, they introduced the keyword let's. So now you have let's as well. I could say let's my second variable. And then now you also have consts. So you have consts. Or you could write it any way you want. All right, let's say const pi. Yeah, for maths. Var and let's and consts are all keywords that you use to declare variables. Now there's something very interesting about them. When you use the var keywords, you're declaring a variable for which you can later on change the value. If you use let's, you're also declaring or creating a variable for which you can change the value later on in your script. Now for const refers, it means you're creating a constant. It cannot change. So if you create a variable using the keyword const, or if you declare a variable using the keyword const, it means whatever value you have here, you put in here, you will not be able to change it at any point later on in your program. Now we are talking about mainly strings and numbers, etc. Now this, what I did here, keep in mind what I did here is not correct because we are talking about declaration here. Declaration is the creation phase. Okay, if I write something like paragraph equals lorem whatever, now I am initializing the variable, which means I am assigning a value to my variable whilst I'm declaring it. So at creation time, whilst I'm declaring this variable, I'm also assigning it a value. So I am initializing the variable. For consts or constants, they need to be initialized when they are being declared. You cannot have a constant just like this. Okay. For let's, same thing. You can leave them that way, or you can also initialize them and give them a value. Now, what happens, let me rectify this before we proceed. What happens if you do not initialize your variable and you just leave it like this? Because you can do that, okay? Now, if you have something like this and then you run your scripts, what happens is that these variables are going to be automatically assigned, or they're going to have the value of undefined. Now, in JavaScript, we have this thing called undefined. Okay, it's not a string, and we'll cover this in future videos. I don't want to confuse you for now, okay? Just keep in mind that if you don't assign any value, you don't initialize your variable, the automatic value that you're going to have is the value of undefined. Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is head over to our Chrome console in DevTools and try and play around with these variables here. Now, right before we do that, keep in mind when you declare a variable, you can initialize it later on. So this is perfectly fine. I can have var paragraph, and then I can have paragraph equals my new paragraph. Just like this, okay? But you cannot do that for constants. You can't have pi and then later on you drop down and you have pi equals 3.14. You cannot do that. Okay, so now I have the Chrome console open right here. Let's replicate what we have here because I'm not running this script right now. So I just want to copy what I have here in here so we can see. If I type, first of all, I'm going to type paragraph right here, paragraph, and it returns the following error message: uncut reference error, paragraph is not defined. So there is no variable right now. There is no alias paragraph or no variable called paragraph that the JavaScript engine knows about. Okay, so we need to declare this variable now, paragraph. Notice when I press enter, so now this paragraph exists, but the value is undefined. So let's check what is the value of paragraph. We get undefined right here. All right, so let's try again with something new. Let's say var new paragraph equals, this is my new. Now we have undefined here. That's what you will see anytime you create a new or you declare a new variable. But if you check here the value of new paragraph, you will see this is the value stored in here. So now I can do it, I can do this. Right now we've declared and initialize. Okay, so at the same time we initialize the variable. Let's try something else. Var tutorial, I can do it that way, it's undefined. Now I can say tutorial equals, this is my, and that's what we get here. So if I do tutorial, I get this value. Notice I declare the variable first, it had undefined. Then I assigned a value to that variable, and now I have this value stored inside the variable. So this is perfectly valid. Now let's use let's and see what happens. If I do let's, right now new tutorial is undefined. Now let's assign a value to new tutorial. It will be, now this is the value stored in new tutorial. Okay, now let's try something. Let's try to initialize the variable at the same time. Like when we declare it, we assign the value to it. We get undefined because that's what we get automatically. But then when we check the value here, we get this at the same time. So you might be asking, what exactly is the difference between var, the keyword var, and the keyword let? Well, we'll cover that in depth in a future video, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 videos. But what you need to know is that it has to do with something called scope. So in JavaScript, we have the scope, and it has to do with how you can access your variables throughout your codes. So I think what is important to understand before we jump into the concept of scope would be functions, how functions work, and then how you can access global variables and then local variables. So we'll talk about that more in the future video. But for now, let's and var are both used to declare keywords, to declare variables that you can modify later on. So now, what is so special about consts? Now I'm thinking I'm gonna have to do a separate video for constants, but for now, the important thing is that constants have to be initialized when you declare them. So when you create a constant, you have to initialize it at the same time. Let's try this live in our console. Const pi, and notice what will happen here. I'm not going to get undefined like we had when we were declaring variables using var or lets. I get this error, uncut syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration. So what this means is that we did not initialize our constant when we were declaring it. So we need to do it that way. Const pi equals 3.14, and now it's correct. Like we don't get any error. Pi is indeed 3.14. I'm going to do an example right here so that you can see everything at the same time. So I'm going to clear this. I'm going to have one thing here, var pi equals 3 intentionally. Let's see. Now var pi is 3. Now let's say I noticed, oh, I made an error, or for whatever reason I need to update my code. I can say now var pi equals 3.14, and that is exactly fine. Now what if I said let's pi equals 3? I get undefined. Let pi is indeed 3. Now let's say let pi equals 3.14. Now let pi indeed equals 3.14. So I can declare a variable, assign the value to it, and then change that value later on. That's what happened. That is what happens with var and let's keywords. Okay, when you declare a variable with var and let's, you can change their values later on. Now let's say if that's the case for constants. If I have first of all, do we still have pi in memory? Yeah, we still do. So let me say here, I'm going to have const pi equals 3. So what is const pi? It is 3. Now I want to change this to 3.14. Notice what is going to happen here. Uncut type error. Assignment to constant variable. We already have const pi here. I cannot now come and change or assign a value to const pi. I mean, it's been initialized, and that's it. Okay, so you declare, you initialize at the same time, and then that's it. The value remains, especially for numbers and strings, etc. I think you get the idea for now. If you want me to elaborate further, let me know in the comment section. Drop your questions, and then I'll just come back and reply to you individually. Usually I read all the comments, so if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask me. But for now, I think I have shared the important points about variables and constants. So in the future video, I'll talk about naming conventions and valid characters, etc. So for now, I hope you get the idea. How to declare a variable. Var, let, const are the main ways in JavaScript. Var and let, the difference between them has to do with scope. We'll cover that later on. But var and let are both used to declare variables, and then you can assign values to them, and you can modify these values later on in your code. This is not the case with constants. You initialize them. When you declare them, you initialize them, and then the value remains. So this is the main point, the main takeaway for this video, and that's how it works in JavaScript. In the next tutorial, we will advance more with variables. So make sure you turn on your notifications. I'll be posting the next video in the next 24 hours. So make sure you turn on your notifications, and please make sure that you subscribe and you give this a thumbs up, and then you share this video. I'll catch you next time.